They expected sorrow, they expected stillness. But no one expected that color. When the royal attendants pushed open the chamber doors on a dim November morning in 1558, warm shafts of stained glass light slipped across the floor like quiet blessings. Yet every blessing evaporated the moment their eyes fell upon the figure in the great bed. Queen Mary Tudor, first crowned Queen Regnant of England, sat upright, frozen in a final posture that seemed neither peaceful nor defiant. Her velvet sheets draped around her legs with the weight of a burial cloth. But it was her skin that made her servants recoil. A deep, unnatural darkness spreading across her neck, arms, and lips, as if some invisible flame had licked her from inside. Whispers crackled through the room like frightened insects. One maid dropped to her knees, crossing herself so quickly her fingers shook. Another turned away and retched behind the heavy curtains. No one dared touch the queen. It wasn't just death. It was death with a terrible story attached. And that story began long before the blackening of her skin, long before the incense, the rumors, the burned sheets. It began with a birth wrapped in prophecy and disappointment, a princess born into expectation and punishment. Mary Tudor arrived on the 18th of February 1516, the only living child of King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. England needed a male heir. Instead, fate delivered a daughter. Bright-eyed, sharp-minded, delicate in stature, but armored in her mother's Spanish devotion and her father's royal blood. To courtiers, she was a miracle. To a kingdom hungry for a prince, she was a complication. Mary grew into a precociously gifted child. She played the virginals before she could read. She spoke Latin with scholars by 7. She carried herself, even as a girl, with the poised solemnity of someone born into prayer and expectation. But her father was already looking past her. Henry VIII's obsession with producing a son twisted the Tudor court into a battlefield of whispers and broken vows. Catherine was cast aside. A new woman, Anne Boleyn, rose in her place. And Mary, once her father's cherished jewel, became a casualty of his ambition. Her household was dismissed, her title stolen, her legitimacy erased. She was ordered to serve in the household of the infant Elizabeth, her half-sister, the daughter of the woman who had replaced her mother. Imagine the humiliation. A princess turned into a political prop. A daughter denied her mother's final hours. A girl who once dined beside kings now treated as a lingering inconvenience. Mary bowed her head in obedience, but inside her something hardened. Her faith became the only anchor she could cling to. A faith tied inseparably to her mother, to Rome, to the past that England was trying to erase. She did survive, but she never forgot. The rise of a queen no one expected. Years passed. Queens rose and fell. Anne Boleyn's head rolled. Henry remarried again and again. Eventually, a fragile son, Edward VI, took the throne. Sickly but male, he fit England's dream better than Mary ever could. But when Edward's health collapsed at 15, Protestant nobles conspired to prevent the Catholic Mary from becoming queen. They installed Lady Jane Grey, a timid, brilliant girl, barely 16, into the monarchy like a pawn sacrificed before the match began. They underestimated Mary. With a determination sharpened by lifelong humiliation, she rode out to East Anglia, raised her standard, and summoned the loyalty of thousands. Noblemen defected. Soldiers abandoned Jane. The people, ordinary men and women, flocked to Mary like pilgrims to a forgotten miracle. In 9 days, Jane's crown dissolved. Mary Tudor entered London not as a claimant but as a returning storm. The bells rang for her, the crowds wept, and beneath the public devotion a deep anxiety rippled. Mary was not simply a queen. She was the daughter of a Spanish Catholic, the child of a discarded queen, the woman who had survived exile through a devotion many feared and admired in equal measure. They had revived a Tudor fire they were not ready to contain, the queen who married hope and found despair. Mary believed that restoring Catholicism wasn't just her right, it was her divine duty. She reinstated the Latin Mass. She reached back toward Rome. She filled the kingdom with the scent of incense and old faith. But she also believed she needed an heir, a Catholic heir, to secure the soul of England. So she married Philip of Spain, the powerful son of Emperor Charles V. He was handsome, disciplined, politically unmatched, and he did not love her. To him, the marriage was a treaty, not a union. When Mary's belly began to swell, the court erupted in joy. At last the kingdom whispered, "A Catholic prince." But the swelling was false, a phantom pregnancy born from longing, hormonal imbalance, or perhaps tumor. When Philip quietly left England soon after, Mary was hollowed, a queen abandoned by her husband and betrayed by her own body. And thus began the fires. She believed she could purify England with flame where her womb had failed. Hundreds died at the stake. Scholars, preachers, men and women who dared pray differently. The world named her Bloody Mary, but she herself saw it as cleansing, redemption, a restoration of order. History rarely forgives a woman for her convictions. A crown made of thorns. Philip returned briefly, demanding Mary's support in his war against France. He did not return for love, nor for reconciliation. Once more, Mary yielded. Once more, he left. Her court cooled. Her advisors drifted. Her sister Elizabeth, silent, calculating, untouched by scandal, began to glow in the shadows like a rising sun waiting for the storm to dissipate. Mary's faith, her marriage, her kingdom, all were slipping beyond her grasp. Then the illness came. It began as a fever, stubborn, lingering, clinging to her as though it had been waiting. Physicians bled her, purged her, whispered Latin diagnoses they barely understood, but nothing lifted the heat crawling beneath her flesh. Her skin slowly changed color. It bruised, it darkened, it blackened. Modern historians suspect liver failure, ovarian disease, or gangrene. Those in her chamber whispered of poison, corruption, divine punishment. Whatever the cause, the queen's flesh tightened and shriveled like parchment exposed to flame. The scent followed soon after, an odor too heavy to hide with herbs or incense. Servants rotated in short shifts to escape the stench. Some fainted, some cried, some refused to enter at all. Yet Mary held her rosary each night, praying to a God who had grown silent. The final night of England's forgotten queen. The last hours of her life were a kind of suspended twilight. Her ladies left her alone, frightened by the sight of her gaunt face and darkened skin. A single candle flickered beside her bed. She sipped a cup of wine with trembling hands. She placed her palm over her abdomen, still believing perhaps that life had once grown there. She whispered names she could no longer fully remember. When morning came, she sat upright, rigid, almost watchful. Her skin had deepened into a disturbing shade, neither the gray of the dead nor the pallor of illness, but something darker, something that made the room feel colder. The servants wrapped her in silk without touching her flesh. Some say the sheets were burned afterward. Others claim they were buried in the palace gardens. All agree on one detail. No one wanted to breathe the same air for long. Burial, erasure, and the ghost left behind. Mary Tudor was laid to rest in Westminster Abbey. No crowds mourned, no children wept. The kingdom exhaled as though released from a long nightmare. Elizabeth, bright, composed, unburdened, was crowned swiftly. England rejoiced in the new dawn. Mary's portraits were removed, her actions rewritten, her name reduced to a curse spoken at candlelit sleepovers. The first Queen of England became a legend for everything except her courage. But history remembers in strange ways. Guards in Westminster whispered of unseen footsteps. Priests felt a chill pass as they walked by her tomb. A maid once claimed she heard Latin whispered from within the stone. Mary Tudor does not rest quietly. Perhaps it is because her life was never allowed quiet. Perhaps every crown worn in agony leaves an imprint on the world. Or perhaps the throne remembers. Every sacrifice of every fire, every woman who bled for its weight. Mary Tudor was not merely a queen. She was a wound England refused to heal. And wounds, when buried, do not vanish, they echo. So before you leave this chamber of history, tap, like to let the story breathe, and subscribe to step deeper into the dark corners of the past where power, fear, and memory collide. Because in this kingdom of untold tales, the dead never stay silent, and history is always waiting for its next witness. Stay with us. The next ghost is already stirring.